All right, back with another tier rankings here, week 2, plowing right ahead. I always do these before the Monday games just because I like to get them out early. I think it's fun after the Sunday games, even if it means that a couple I can't talk about their week 2 performance, including the Buccaneers, the Chargers, the Raiders, and another team which I haven't put on the board just yet because I changed the tiers. So if you've watched the last 2, I keep getting confused about I had a tier that was maybe playoffs, and to be honest, it was just it was too big of a net with that tier, so like half the teams kept going there. So I've split that up into solid and mid. The Texans are they were in that tier. I'm going to keep them in solid as well. I also, after thinking about it, I had the Raiders in feels like playoffs. Now that I've broken up those tiers, I think Raiders in solid feels fair as well. So if you want more of my thoughts on those teams, you can watch last week's video. But since they didn't play, let's just go to teams that did play. First, Tennessee Titans, who I made the comparison to Kyler Murray's Cardinals the first year he joined that team. They were obviously both first overall picks, so both joining the worst team in football, and just like they seem like solid. Well, solid's a tier, but like, so it's not solid, but they seem like okay. They seem competent, which is not maybe what they were last year. I'm going to put them in Scrappy. I think Cam Ward keeps them in games. He also has made mistakes in both games that has hurt them, but like, young player doing what he can there. So yeah, they feel like the poster child for the Scrappy tier, in my opinion. The Miami Dolphins, who I put in bad last week because of how bad week 1 was, they still have Tua, they still have Tyreek Hill, Devon Achane, Jalen Waddle. Those guys remember that they can at least play football this week, unlike last week, and the Colts might just be really good. This defense is still horrible, but I'm willing to put them up to Scrappy. I think Scrappy feels a little bit more fair. They nearly had that win against, again, another team that, spoiler alert, is probably going to end up in the Scrappy tier as well. But, like, I think that they've shown that they do have talent here. The Jets, meanwhile, the reverse happened. I had them in the Scrappy tier last week because, like, they did look very competent against the Steelers. This time they did not. They were not able to pass the ball at all in this one. Under 100 passing yards. Ran the ball okay, but most of that was quarterback runs. The running back runs weren't able to do much. Bills did a great job at forcing the Jets into obvious passing situations. They weren't able to succeed. Jets defense looked better, weirdly, against the Bills, but I mean, honestly, it could have been worse for them defensively. Yeah, not a good football team. They're in the bad tier. The Cincinnati Bengals, who I wasn't crazy about entering this season, and now Joe Burrow is projected to miss maybe close to the whole season. That's not good. This defense, I still don't think is very good. Did not have a great day against the Jaguars, even if it isn't getting turnovers. That's the one good thing, but how sustainable is that? I don't know. Jake Browning is not a bad backup. He's probably a good backup, especially he fits kind of what this team needs. Not afraid to throw it down the field. But despite the fact that they're 2-0, I think mid is where I'm going to keep them for now. They still have, again, Jake Browning, not a bad backup, and they still have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, which is good enough to win you some games, but there's not a lot else there at this point. The Cleveland Browns, who I also put in the Scrappy tier last week, wasn't willing to put them fully in the bad tier due to really good defense. I actually do like this Browns defense a lot. They just don't have enough offensively. Quinshon Judkins is at least a playmaker offensively, but only so much you can do as a running back when there isn't a lot else there. I wouldn't be shocked if after the tough beginning of the season ends, maybe they go with Dylan Gabriel. I think that's going to happen sooner rather than later, even though it wasn't like Joe Flacco's fault. There's just not a lot there, and at some point they're going to want to try to get the young guys in there. Not a good football team. They're in the bad tier as well. We then have the Jacksonville Jaguars, who, week 1 looked great. That might say more about the Panthers than them. They, there's all this turmoil with Liam Cohen getting into it with Trevor Lawrence. And then, there's the talk of Brian Thomas Jr. kind of ducking away from contact, which resulted in a turnover in this game. That stuff is what it is, but also, like, again, you just lost to the Cincinnati Bengals, who everyone says it's Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and then, no one else. and they didn't have one of those guys for most of this game, and you still lost that football game, a game they really kind of had won and let slip through their fingers on that final drive. A disappointing defensive performance against still an offensive firepower, but I'm going to go mid. Still a team I want to see a bigger sample size on because I do think Liam Cohen coached a really good game. Like the X's and O's, he's one of the best in the league at that, and like that's translated so far. So like guys were getting open. Like that's the good news for Jacksonville is I think they have a good coach, at least X's and O's wise. We'll see about the other stuff, but yeah, disappointing loss for them. You know who wasn't disappointing was the Detroit Lions, who I didn't realize I bumped them down this far. I bumped them down to the maybe playoffs tier, which again was the combination of solid and mid. That was an overreaction. I overreacted to the Lions week 1. It was really more about Packers than Lions. I think they looked like the Lions again. I'm going to bump them all the way back up to dark horse. I'm not sure if I can quite go in Super Bowl contenders just yet because like I also don't think the Bears are that great, so I want to see it a little bit more of a sample size with kind of the new personnel and all that stuff. But what a performance from this Detroit Lions team. If they keep playing like this, they can be Super Bowl contenders. So definitely closer to Super Bowl contenders than even feels like playoffs. So yeah, really good performance by them. We then have the Minnesota Vikings, who weird 2 weeks. I mean, through 7 out of the 8 quarters, they've looked really inept offensively. The other quarter was good enough that they got the win against Chicago, so they're 1-1. A lot of offensive line injuries have definitely played a role in this, where Christian Darrisaw, their superstar left tackle, has been banged up from an injury that was last season. He's missed the first few weeks of this season. Then his backup got hurt, so like that's obviously a big issue, and once that gets healthier, that'll help. And I think the Falcons' defense is good, so I'm not going to completely panic. And we have seen a little bit of J.J. McCarthy playing well, but also like he's got to start playing better. I still think this is a really good defense. I still think there is talent offensively, and I still believe in J.J. McCarthy enough. But like, yeah, mid feels fair. Then we have the San Francisco 49ers, who I put them in the feels like playoffs tier after week 1, and I still feel like they feel like that caliber of team when healthy, but again, they're pretty much never healthy. There's Mac Jones starting for them right now, and that's I'm going to just factor that in. I'm going to say right now, what are they? I think that they are a solid team. I think I'm going to put them in a solid tier. I think they still have a good defense, even if it wasn't its best day against Spencer Rattler. But still pretty good. Good defense. They can, Kyle Shanahan is still Kyle Shanahan. He is still one of the best X's and O's guys in the league, in my opinion. They still do have offensive firepower. Ricky Pearsall has looked awesome to start this season. So, like, yeah, I still think they're solid. I'm only bumping them down due to injuries. I think healthy, there at least feels like playoffs. Next up, we have the Atlanta Falcons, who I was very impressed with last week. I put them in the maybe playoffs tier, which, like I said, probably too wide of a net for that tier, which is why I broke it up into 2 different tiers. But I think I'm going to jump them up over both. I think they just feel like a playoff team to me. Like, you still have some missed throws from Michael Penix, but we do see him make plays. Bijan Robinson is Bijan Robinson. They also block very well in front of him, which helps, against not an easy front to do that with Minnesota and Tampa Bay. Although the running game wasn't great against Tampa Bay, but that I think says more about Tampa Bay. Defense has just looked so good. They've added so many pieces with this draft. A lot of people made fun of the going out and getting James Pierce Jr. But again, what they gave up for it looks worse than it actually was, because essentially they're trading next year's first for this year's first, so they're kind of gambling on themselves. But ultimately, I think James Pierce Jr. is a really good player, and they're just adding another defensive piece. So that they might have a kind of a complete defense. This is a completely different team. For a team that was all offense and no defense last year, being all offense and some defense, that helps. I'm totally buying in to this Atlanta Falcons team. Baltimore Ravens, again, I think some people have taken them out of the Super Bowl contenders tier, but not many. I think most of us agree after week 1, they still should have been in the contenders tier, and then no doubt about it after week 2. Lamar Jackson was awesome in this game as usual, even with the Browns defense competing for the beginning part of that game. The Browns weren't able to get anything going offensively. Still, the questions I have about the Ravens defense are still there because I don't trust this Browns offense to capitalize on those issues. But they did what they were supposed to do. They blew out a team. They're scoring over 40 points a game. That's going to win you some football games. The Chicago Bears, who I put in the maybe playoffs tier, which is the solid/mid tier now, and I kind of feel as though they're like I guess I'm debating, are they mid or are they scrappy? I do think they lost to Minnesota and then they got killed by the Lions, but the Lions seemingly are good. We've seen them do that to teams over the years in the Dan Campbell era. Still, I'm gonna put them in the mid. I'll be nice to the Chicago Bears for now. I still feel like I want to see them against a team that isn't a division rival. I want to see a little bit more sample size. Could they get bumped down a tier to scrappy? Perhaps. I think that's totally possible. The defense looks awesome week 1, horrible week 2. Again, that's J.J. McCarthy, and then that's Jared Goff and the Lions, like two very different animals that they had to deal with. Ultimately lost both, but yeah, I don't know. Putting them in a mid tier could definitely talk me into scrappy, but I still do feel like there is talent here. Even if they're not living up to it. Maybe I'm crazy, but that's what I'm thinking. The Cowboys, who are, they're this year's Cincinnati Bengals, right? All offense, no defense, but they've been a fun watch. Again, we'll see how long Dak Prescott can keep this going, but he's been awesome through 2 weeks. I'm going to put them in solid because, defense still matters, and their defense is just not playing well. But, I think that they're solid. They could maybe find a way to fight their way into a playoff spot. As of right now, that's where I have them. Indianapolis Colts. Yeah, this is a team that after week 1, I said feels like playoffs, and they're getting closer to the dark horse tier. Won't quite go there, but definitely feels like playoffs right now. Daniel Jones is playing very well. The entire offense is playing very well. Everyone's doing their job. And again, that was against what we thought was going to be the best defense in football this season and had a great week 1 in the Denver Broncos. Yeah, really good stuff. Granted, it came down to kind of some field goal shenanigans at the end, but hey, a win is a win. And their defense is playing well as well. Not their best game in this one, but also part of it was every drive that the Broncos scored on, they scored 7. So that that allowed the Broncos to score a bit more. You turn some of those touchdowns into field goals, and that game looks very different. So yeah, a really good performance by the Indianapolis Colts. The Los Angeles Rams, I thought Matthew Stafford played very well outside of the one interception. I think that the defense wasn't quite as dominant in week 2. Part of that is, you don't get the Texans offensive line to go up against anymore. And Cam Ward's pretty good. So I'm not going to crush him too much. That was a very competitive game. But yeah, I viewed them as a dark horse contender. They did kind of pull away at the end there. So winning a game relatively handedly, ultimately, against, a team in the scrappy tier. I'm not going to bump you down a tier for that. So still dark horse for the Rams. The Commanders, who I kept in the dark horse because I was kind of excited about their defense after week 1. Is this the real deal? Well, I don't feel that way after week 2 at all. Again, it's Green Bay, and I think they're kind of just going to do that to people this season, so I'm not going to fully panic. I am a little tempted to bump them down multiple tiers. I'll keep them in feels like playoffs, though. I had them in dark horse last week. Going to keep them in feels like playoffs. I think that still feels fair. I still feel like there's too much talent offensively, and Jaden Daniels is too good for this to not be a playoff team, unless the sophomore slump is a real thing, but I'm not going to jump to that conclusion after 2 underwhelming weeks. I still think this is a playoff team. Kansas City Chiefs, who I took out of the Super Bowl contenders tier and put in the dark horse tier in week 1, which I was worried, was that an overreaction? Going to keep it there for now in the dark horse. I know some people are saying the Chiefs are horrible. Let's keep in mind, they were a drop Travis Kelce pass away from probably winning that football game against the Philadelphia Eagles, who are the Super Bowl favorites. That was not a disastrous game. It was an unfortunate ending for the Kansas City Chiefs, but they're still Patrick Mahomes, and there still is some other pieces. The defense totally stepped up and started playing well, which is a big deal. If week 1 was an anomaly, that makes you feel a lot better about the Chiefs. They're gonna get Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice back. That's going to change how this offense looks. It's a bit of a mess right now, but it is going to get better, and you still have Patrick Mahomes. But you can't put them in the top tier because they haven't played that well. I think that's fair. The Saints, you know what? I put them in Scrappy last week, and I feel good about that. Scrappy again. They're staying in games. They might not have won either of these games, but in both situations, they found themselves down a score, trying to drive and see if they could tie or take the lead. Weren't able to get it done on either of those drives. Spencer Rattler, I don't know what his ceiling is, but he's going to be in the league for another decade. I mean, he's at least a competent quarterback who's probably going to be a backup for at least a decade. That guy's going to secure generational wealth in the NFL, just with being a solid player who can do all right, and keeping things at least fun to watch for the Saints. It would be kind of a frustrating season if they didn't have this solid quarterback. But again, runs the offense, right? He's not doing anything crazy. He makes the occasional nice play with his legs, but for the most part, just runs the offense and does a good job at it. So give him some credit. There's just not enough talent on this roster. So yeah, but hey, if there isn't that fumble, maybe they win the game. Who knows? The Giants, who played in a wild game against the Dallas Cowboys, they're also, I don't know if they're all offense, no defense, or if that was just the Cowboys and kind of how you have to play against them. Russell Wilson did wake up. He got too much criticism week one. He did. That was not all on Russell Wilson week one, and he showed that he can still be competitive. They're putting Jackson Dart in on some plays, which is interesting. We'll see when that happens, but yeah, I mean, Wilson made sure that he was keeping his job. Horrible final throw, but still, good stuff. I had him in the bad tier after week one. I don't feel like they're in the bad tier. I think I could bump them up to Scrappy. Still not a great performance when your defense gives up that much points, but at least there is some talent here. The Philadelphia Eagles are next on this list, which, they're an obvious Super Bowl contenders, reigning champs 2-0, including beating the Kansas City Chiefs, which is still an impressive thing to do, even with the Chiefs now on a 3-game losing streak. The Eagles were 2 of those games, right? So that's a part of it. Defense looked great for the Eagles after kind of a bit of a tough week one. Might say more about Dallas than Philadelphia. Eagles offense still doesn't look fully right. They're still not, with the exception of that one Devonta Smith pass down the field, they're still not really hitting down the field to start this year. That's kind of the one knock. But I think Hurts is playing really good football. Even with the underwhelming stat lines in these games, I think he is doing some really nice things. Obvious Super Bowl contenders. The Steelers, so I put in the feels like playoffs tier. They're definitely not that after week one. They're either in solid or mid. And to be honest, I'm kind of down towards mid right now with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, as good as the offense looked week one, that was not a great, it wasn't horrible, but it wasn't great. Usually you can at least trust the Steelers to not make mental mistakes. Caleb Johnson had a horrible mistake that cost them the game, or cost them a chance of getting back in that game. And let's not forget, there was a special teams fumble that helped them against the Jets in week one. That was a very competitive game against a team that doesn't look great now, the New York Jets. I think Rodgers, there was probably an overreaction to week one that I kind of talked about on my video. I think there's maybe going to be an overreaction to week two as well, with the numbers flipping the other way. He's fine. Rodgers is fine. Solid player, but as of right now, I'm just not fully buying into this Pittsburgh team, a team that I felt like was a clear playoff team after week one. I have a lot of doubts after week two. Denver Broncos, I still think are a playoff team. I'm still going to put them in the feels like playoffs caliber. I know the defense didn't have a great day. It's going to get better. Bo Nix played well. Outside of the turnover, good offensive performance by him. You still want to see a little bit more depth with the playmaking. Here was Troy Franklin, who had a great day, but other than that, not a ton offensively for them in the passing game. And ultimately, the mistake at the end, that's not ideal. It was a penalty. Sorry, Broncos fans. They didn't describe it well on the broadcast, but I made a video explaining it if you want to check that out. It was a penalty. But yeah, ultimately, not the best defensive day. I think it'll be better, though. That happens. Gone are the days where a defense can dominate 17 games in the NFL. It's a new era, but that doesn't mean they can't still dominate some games and make the playoffs. The Green Bay Packers are next on this list, a team that I was lower on than most people entering the season. Very wrong about that, But I've corrected quickly. I immediately put them in the Super Bowl contenders tier after week 1, which I was worried, am I overreacting to week 1? No, I was not. This team is for real. I mean, they look like they might be Super Bowl favorites after that. This incredible defense is just unbelievable. Yes, Micah Parsons is Micah Parsons, but it's all 11 guys that are playing great for this defensive unit on the field. And then Jordan Love being a fringe MVP candidate, okay, that changes how I view the Packers. So I wasn't crazy about the Micah Parsons trade because I was like, is this team really ready to compete right now? Yes, they are. I was wrong about everything about the Packers this offseason, but hey, changing my opinions when new information comes out. They are very good. The Panthers are not. Panthers are in the bad tier. Really bad stuff by the Panthers. They almost won that game miraculously with the made onside kick, but man, and maybe that's something to grow off of. Last year they had a horrible start. Were able to get better. But man, and Bryce Young's been disappointing. I was really, really kind of telling everyone, like, hey, look out for Bryce Young this year. Not great. Ted McMillan's awesome. McMillan's a really good receiver. The Cardinals, who I put in the maybe playoffs tier, so that's solid or mid. They're 2-0. I'll put them in solid. Why not? They've completely let their foot off the gas in both of these games. They should have had 2 blowout wins and weren't able, or at least two score wins and like let their foot off the gas. So that they got to stop doing that. But like Kyler Murray's made a lot of really nice plays. Like the offense is a very good offense. The defense has looked better, albeit against weak competition. They just got to make sure they close out games, and they have won both games. Just maybe a little bit more concerning with some of the stuff than you would ideally like. So yeah, there's that. The Buffalo Bills are obviously Super Bowl contenders, kind of a weird game against the Jets, but the Bills defense looked all the way back. Yes, against the Jets, but again, Jets played well against the Steelers, right? So Bills defense looking fully like the Bills defense, maybe week 1 with the Bills and Ravens was just about the offenses, not about their defenses, perhaps. Maybe a little about their defenses, but at least here they were able to, stop the run really well, get the Jets into obvious passing situations, and the Jets couldn't convert on those. Josh Allen's still Josh Allen, despite the poor numbers. He was very good in this game as well. So, yeah, easy Super Bowl contenders for the Bills. Those feel like the 4 teams right now, 2 in each conference, the Ravens and Bills, and then the Eagles and Packers, with the other teams maybe still having an opportunity to get in there. How about the Seahawks getting a big win here against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I'm going to put this, I can't put them in the same tier as the Steelers. They beat them and kind of felt like the better team. I think solid feels fair for the Seahawks. I still like this defense. Darnold can run an offense. He has to protect the football better. That's what it's going to come down to in the following weeks. But yeah, I mean, Cooper Kupp stepping up is huge. If he could be a real number 2 receiver for them, there's concerns. Is he washed? All that stuff. Had 90 yards in this game. They're going to win a lot of football games with someone other than Jackson Smith-Njigba stepping up. Jackson Smith-Njigba is awesome. So, yeah, good bounce back week for the Seahawks after a loss in week 1. And then the Patriots, who also had a bad loss in week 1, able to kind of rebound and beat the Miami Dolphins. I'll keep them in the scrappy tier as well here. Drake May looked much better in this game, but also I think the Dolphins' defense is very bad, so I don't know exactly what to make of that. Patriots did have some nice trench play, though, that was able to kind of seal the deal, especially at the end of that game versus the Dolphins. So Patriots get the win. They're better than, if it was a power rankings, they'd be better than the Dolphins, but still have them in the same tier after 2 weeks. We'll see what changes going forward. But yeah, those are my thoughts after week 2. Let me know in the comments below. What are your thoughts? I think I finally nailed which tiers I want. There's not one tier that has half the teams in it, so I feel like I figured it out finally. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Always love hearing from ya. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.